Gavin Newsom was carefully selected to be in this position right now. And I am exposing him now so that he does not become any sort of primary for president. And yes, this is going to be a very long video, so sit tight. First off, let's talk about both of Gavin's wives. Now, this was Gavin's first wife. You may not recognize this face because this is the one she has now.
The best is yet to come!
Yes, Gavin Newsom was married to the former fiance of Donald Jr. And no, their marriage didn't end because of differences of opinion. Their 10-year relationship ended because they were living on different coasts. When Kimberly was in law school, she interned at San Francisco's district attorney's office, where she moonlit as a lingerie model and modeled for Victoria's Secret. Red flag. A year after his divorce, Gavin Newsom, then 38, dated a 19-year-old model and hostess. A month later, he started dating film director Jennifer Siebel, who would go on to be his wife. In February of 2007, Gavin would then go on to seek treatment for an alcohol use disorder after his friend, campaign manager, and former chief of staff Alec Turek confronted him after learning that he and his wife, who was Gavin Newsom's secretary, had an affair in 2005. Siebel and Newsom announced their engagement later that year, and before their marriage in 2008, she actually was a registered Republican. She re-registered as a no-party preference, but accidentally registered as a far-right American Independent Party. And it just so happens that Jennifer Newsom's sister is married to Josh Schiller, the co-founder of Boies Schiller Flexner. You know, the law firm that's representing a majority of the Epstein victims. They also happen to be the law firm that represented Harvey Weinstein. Jennifer Newsom was an accuser of Harvey Weinstein, and in fact testified against him in 2022, saying that in 2005, the year before she met Gavin Newsom, he had raped her in a hotel room, luring her there under the pretense of holding professional discussions about film projects. And in that trial, Alan Jackson, as in Karen Reed's Alan Jackson, claimed that it was consensual and transactional, and a mistrial was actually declared on those charges. Now remember, I've reported in the past that the Boies Schiller law firm in 2017 not only hired private intelligence company Black Cube, which is a former Star People intelligence officers, to spy and orchestrate campaigns against the victims of Weinstein, doing the same thing for the New York Times, who was actually a client of the law firm. And in 2021, Rose McGowan alleged that Gavin Newsom's wife tried to bribe her to be silent about Harvey Weinstein. At this point, I trust very few people in this world, but I trust Rose McGowan. It should also be noted that not only was Hunter Biden a part of this law firm, but so was Ann O'Leary, who was not only the former chief of staff for Gavin Newsom, but was the co-director for the transition team for Hillary and Cain. And shocker, now she's involved in AI. Now that we have that out of the way, I can talk about Gordon Getty, who is, yes, in the Epstein files. You see, Gordon Getty's father was J. Paul Getty, a fourth-generation oil tycoon, and in the 60s was the world's wealthiest private citizen. I'm just gonna glaze through the Getty family because I'm gonna definitely make a second video focusing more in detail on them, but this video is about Gavin Newsom and not them. Now, Papa Getty was a notorious womanizer, but frankly, that's not what I would probably call him in today's age, because when he was 25, a woman brought a paternity suit against him saying that he had taken her for she was drunk and fathered a child. Oh, but it doesn't end there, because out of his 5 wives, 2 of them were 17 when he met her, and Gordy Getty's mother was introduced to him when she was 14. And I'm glazing over this whole incident, but I'll talk more about it in the next video I make about it. But the grandson of Papa Getty was kidnapped at 16 years old, essentially by a branch of the Italian mafia, and he haggled with the kidnappers for the return. It should also be mentioned that the brother of the kidnapped victim and nephew to Gordon Getty was Mark Getty, as in Getty Images Getty. And yes, Mark Getty is also mentioned in the files. In this email chain, he is corresponding with Eduardo Teodorani Fibri, who is currently the chairman and vice president at the Italian Chamber of Commerce and Industry for the UK. Jeffrey asks if somebody named Davina is pregnant, and Teodorani says no, and I found out that the story was a scam, it's not my kid, and tomorrow I'm having lunch with my friend Mark Getty, full of Kitty. And then they talk about getting Kitty in Paris. It's a whole thing. I'm not even going to show you that. It's disgusting. I know I'm going through this really quickly, and I promise you I'm trying my best, but there's a lot of stuff to get through. Now, Gavin Newsom's father, William Newsom, was not only a judge, but the administrator of the Getty Family Trust. He was the legal advisor to the Italian division of Getty Oil. The Italian division, you say? And then was the tax attorney for the Getty family. Newsom also helped deliver the ransom money for the release of John Paul Getty III. Now, William Newsom tried to get into politics, but he was unsuccessful. So then Newsom became a corporate counsel and board member for the Trans-International Computer Investment Corporation, which handled classified government documents for which Newsom was issued a security clearance. The company then went bankrupt in 1971 in what they called the biggest stock fraud in California history. Papa Newsom then spent a year traveling around Europe with Otto von Bullschwing, a former intelligence officer for the Yahtzees, who in 1945 came to America, denounced his Yahtzee ways, and started working for the CIA. Well, then it turns out his war crimes were uncovered, and he was forced to give up his American citizenship in 1981. But not before Papa Getty appointed him the president of TCI. Now, in 2013, Robert Trivers, who was a friend of Epstein's, introduced Gordon Getty to Epstein. Now, I'm going to dive more specifically into those emails and everything in the next video, but it should be known that scientist Robert Trivers, who introduced the two, said of Epstein's publicly to Reuters in 2015 that Epstein's assaults on underage girls, by the time they're 14 or 15, they're like grown women were 60 years ago. So I don't see the act so heinous. Saying that Epstein is a person of integrity who should be given credit for serving time in prison for settling civil lawsuits brought by women who said they were abused. And after being introduced, Gordon Getty does confirm that Jeffrey Epstein is that Jeffrey Epstein, and he tells Trivers, we all have similar kinds of problems. Which brings me back to Gavin Newsom. So Gavin Newsom's aunt, Barbara Newsom, sister of William Newsom, was actually married to Ron Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's brother. After divorcing Gavin Newsom's father, his mother opened up their home to foster children. Which, sure, that might be innocent, but let's think of it all big picture, y'all. Because Newsom's father had a habit of donating much of his income, further tightening the family's finances. I just laid out the man's pedigree. Why was he donating all of his money? Well, maybe that's because it seems like the Gettys were supplementing their lifestyle, receiving luxurious gifts from the Getty family, going on expensive trips, meeting the King of Spain. And after Newsom graduated with a bachelor's degree in political science, instead of going into that field, he founded a winery called PlumpJack with Gordon Getty as an investor. The PlumpJack group grew into 23 different businesses, including wineries, restaurants, and hotels. And it wasn't until 1996 that he actually began his political career, which, if I'm doing my math right, would have been the year after he and Kimberly Guilfoyle started dating. She was working on a re-election campaign at the time and was a regular fixture at political fundraisers organized by oil billionaire Gordon Getty, whose son William she dated. And when she and Gavin got married, they had their reception in the home of Ann and Gordon Getty with 500 people. And if all this isn't weird enough, Gordon Getty actually wrote an opera because he fancies himself a composer rather than a businessman. But he wrote an opera called PlumpJack, the name of the company that he and Gavin Newsom started together, based on the Shakespearean character Sir John Falstaff. For those of you that don't have degrees in theater like me, Sir John Falstaff is a corrupt knight who acts as a surrogate father to the prince, guiding him through a life of crime and mischief, and questioning the value of honor. It's almost like the name of their business was trying to say something. And even if this isn't enough for you, if you're not seeing the weird patterns that I am, just think of it this way. His family also had a weirdly close relationship with Pelosi. After Gordon Getty's wife, Ann Getty, yes, that Ann Getty, Nancy Pelosi issued a public statement about her death, but Nancy Pelosi officiated the marriage ceremony of their granddaughter, Ivy Getty. We deserve better than another Nancy Pelosi. Let's not fall for the same mistakes and traps that we did in the past. Do not make this man president.